Good evening, this is Nerd the Human, and welcome to this guide to playing any faction as a Horde in Rome Total War's Barbarian Invasion. This is a very similar process in the remastered version, but the files just look a little bit different. Whichever way you want to play, I will take you through the process. Whilst Barbarian Invasion introduced the Horde mechanic, there are a selection of factions who are set to be settled and cannot Horde at all. The Celts, the Saxons, the Alemanni, the Berbers, the Sassanids, the Roman factions and the Rebels. My job today is to show you how you can make these factions into hordeable factions, should you simply want a more chaotic campaign map, have a specific roleplay in mind, or you simply want a fresh campaign. I'll take you through two examples with different solutions. The first of these, the Romano British, are a particularly odd one. In the original they can emerge like a horde, but should you wish to play as the faction, hording is not an option. I do actually have a guide for unlocking the faction from years back, where I explained how to give them a city to start their campaign because of this exact horde problem. This time though, we can fix that right up. In the remaster, the Romano British became playable, although it should be said that it is a little bit bugged as the hordes appear repeatedly to wreck your economy, but that is a whole other issue. If I have made a video for that when you're watching this, I'll put a little link up at the top. Thus today I'm going to show you how we can make the Romano British a proper horde faction in the original Barbarian Invasion, seeing that it is already an option in the remaster. I'll also take the Alemanni as a second example and show you how you can make any of these other factions into a hordeable faction. I'll do this with both the original files and with Remastered, so if you are here for the remaster, you can skip using the chapters to the Alemanni section. Let's head into the files. The file we need is inside Rome Total War's Barbarian Invasion subfolder BI, and from there we head into data. Now once inside data, we need to swing all the way down to deska_sm_factions. Once inside the file, we are simply going to use the Control F function to find the Romano British, who you can see here are currently spawned on an event. No need to worry about that though. What we need to do is think about how we can add in all of these horde units here, because quite frankly it's as simple as that. We just need to make sure this file knows what to do if you have yourself a horde-in faction. So all we need to do then is start from just below here, the custom battle availability, and we are going to copy, Control C, and we're just going to plonk that into the same space here, Control V for the paste. And here you can see that it's got a little bit of a description here, how many units, for example, you'll get when you horde. Now you can see here we get 4 max characters. You can see there is a reduction every time you create a new horde as well. But you know what, really what's important is we need to change the horde units here. And to do that, we are going to need to actually know the name of some of our units. So we're going to head back into the data file to go and find those. For now though, we can just save this up. This isn't going to be our solution just yet, but once we found the units we need, we can come back here. Back inside the data folder, we're going to head from deska_sm_factions down to the bottom here with export_deska_unit. Inside this file, we're once again going to use the Control F function to find any Romano British units. So for example, we have the Western Peasant. We can add that in if we want. What we really want to do is just note down the type here, just the name of the unit. So as we cycle through, we can see Western Archer, Foederati Infantry, Bucellari, etc, etc. So we're simply going to copy these names, write them down, and we're going to head back to the other file to put in the ones that we want. Back inside deska_sm_factions then, I have replaced all those original horde units with some lovely Romano British ones. So you can see that now we are set up with these potential units to pop up. Now we can actually repeat some of these if you want certain ones to become more common. So realistically, we're going to have more of these archers and peasants, for example, maybe some extra Foederati as well. So I'm just going to add in the odd extra line in there just to make sure they're a little bit more common. I think that seems perfectly sensible. So we can save this up and we can see where we're at right now. Before we can actually see what that's done to the game, we are actually going to need to make the Romano British playable, so let's go and do that. We need to head back inside the data folder towards the World subfolder, into Maps, Campaign, Barbarian Invasion, and then we need to open this file here, deska_strat. Once inside the file, our first job is to simply move the Romano British from the non-playable section into the playable section. Nice and simple that. But what we also need to do is go and change some of their details. So we'll head on down. We can see that at the start they don't really have anything dead until resurrected. Well, we're going to remove that because we are going to start as a proper faction. 10,000 denarii, you can change that if you wish. We don't need to give them a city, of course, because we've made them hordeable. What we do need to do, though, is give them a general and an army. So what I need to do is go and grab our good friend Placus. Now, I'm picking Placus Flavius to start with here because he is the one in York. And obviously I want to start in the British Isles. You can pretty much pick where you want to go. This just gives us a bit of a starting point. So I'm going to grab that information just as a nice template, really. The less you have to write stuff yourself and the more you just edit, the less chance you have of making a mistake. So we're going to have Placus Flavius here. He's a named character. And we're going to make him leader. Okay, we'll make him leader. We'll make him 30, something like that. That will be absolutely fine. If you're unsure about this kind of thing, by the way, once again, just go and find yourself an example. And we can see here, faction leader. So you can see named character, leader. And of course, yeah, we could give him that trait as well. So let's go and make sure we grab that. And we head back down towards the Romano British. Perfect. I seem to have got myself a bit lost in the file there. That's absolutely fine. We'll head on back up towards our friends. There we are. So with that found, see our traits here. We'll give ourselves faction leader. Perfect. And he's already got some other traits. You can change some of this if you want. Apparently he's a bad infantry general because this is Placus the Horseman, of course. If you want to change this around, feel free to do as you like. I might just give him just some basic. Well, let's keep him handsome. I'm going to keep him handsome. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, we'll have ourselves a nice handsome bastard. It can be slightly less handsome than that, though. That's absolutely fine. And maybe less genocide or... Alright, I think that'll be fine. You can choose if he's going to be pagan or Christian, by the way. In fact, yeah, we should probably make sure he is Christian because we can get ourselves some monks. So maybe we want to go and do that as well. So I'll just have a little look around for any other Christians. I'm pretty certain that is as simple as, yeah, trait Christian. You can see that diplomat has it over there. So yeah, Christian 1. We'll just go and give him Christian 1. I think that's going to be a good plan for us all. So back down to our Placus. Lovely stuff. We'll just give him that last trait so that he is a Christian rather than a pagan. Fine. You don't really need to change any of this particularly. The faction leader trait should sort itself out by the fact that you are a faction leader. So no worries there. What's important for us really is that we've got this character here and we have this location. This location is York because that's why I picked this character out. We can simply change this very slightly in order to make this work. So I'm just going to make it 52. We're just a few tiles away from York on this particular occasion. I'll show you how you can go and find some of those other things later. We should probably remove actually these ancillaries over here because those are specific to the Romans. Fine. Now, as for the army itself, we have ourselves a set of units here. And like we've already done in the Desiccatus and faction file, we want to replace this with some of ours. Now, obviously, as Romano British, these are actually quite similar to our own, but we can make this army be whatever we want. Bear in mind, if you're a Horde at the start, you're going to need enough to take a city. So you might want to maybe have a little bit more than this, maybe like a good 10 or 12 unit Horde. It's down to you, but if you are starting as a Horde, you're going to need enough to actually take a city. So bear that in mind. So I'm going to go back to our other file and just grab ourselves some other units to replace these. With those units changed up, you can see that here we have ourselves a nice selection of Romano British units. But there is one more thing we need to do here, which is think about our character name. Now, there is a list of names of different factions. I'll show you where that is in a moment. There's also a video specific to that if you're interested in changing that kind of thing. But for me, I've simply picked a name out, and I'm going to call our lad here Cador Castus. Absolutely marvellous. There is also a video explaining how to create a family tree. I'm not going to bother doing that here on this occasion. If you are interested in doing that kind of thing, I'll also put a little link up to that. Now, we'll just save this up, and I think we should be in a good place now to go and load up the game. Before we load the game, though, we should just head back into data and world, and I'll just point out this little file here, Desiccatus_names. This is where we can look up some of the names that would be specific for this faction. Inside here it is quite self-explanatory. You can see the faction followed by a list of names. So if we head down to Romano British, you can see here that we have a list of names, including the ones that I picked over here. Cador, that'll be the first names. Eventually you'll get to the surnames. I went for casters. There are women here in case you want to create that family tree, but I'll just leave this here as a short little clip just to make sure you know where to look. Back inside the game then, and we can now see that the Romano British are indeed playable. They've even got themselves a little description here, which is surprising considering they're not a playable faction in any way, but there we are. If we start our campaign and load up the game, then hopefully we'll see that I haven't mucked this up entirely. Nope, indeed I haven't. Very nice indeed. So we have a people in flight, the Vandals, people in flight, the Huns, and people will probably be getting that message about us as well. You can see here we just avoided this little mountain range here. That's very good. If you want to move your character anywhere else and you just want to change that grid reference, then you can just hover over the area you want. Bring up the Roman shout. For me, it's the button just left of the number 1. I don't actually know what you'd call that button. It's a bit of a strange one. But with the Roman shout up, we simply type show_cursor stat. And that will give you the reference there, 39127. So we could try moving him there later if we wanted to. Nonetheless, you can see here we've got our army. We've got Cador Casters with his trusty steed. Very nice. Good for, yes, commanding cavalry, not infantry. Bit of a problem because he has lots of infantry, but you can change it as you want. Superior attacker, a handsome Christian of a man. Of course, yes, as I say, you could set that to be pagan if you like, but we're going to, yeah, why not? Just swing over here to Bericum. Maybe bring more than one unit, Thomas. Not a terrible idea. Of course, yes, I did bring along some ballista. On this occasion, I wonder if we can beat the original Placus Flavius. Why not? Let's just auto-resolve. It's an average victory. You can probably do it yourself. And at this point, we can continue sacking or we can occupy. Of course, when we're occupied, we can become a horde. And we can see the rest of this working now. So we've got ourselves a pile of other generals. We most likely have 4 of them. Yes, there are some peasants, another guy, there we are. So yeah, we've got ourselves a selection up to 4 generals at this point because that's what the game is expecting us to have from a horde, okay? That's one of the little options we looked at in Descant S and Factions. And you can see here we've got a pile of peasants. And now we just got random selections of those units that I already picked. But you might notice that many factions do actually have specific horde units, and that is something I want to now address. I brought us along over here to Londinium just to show off my point, which is that at the moment this force here is supposed to merge into the city as we occupy it, but none of those men became a part of the city population. Now that's a problem because if I continue to take my armies here, and if we just keep on attacking these cities, we're going to never actually settle our men into these cities, which means we're going to remain ridiculously powerful. The whole point with these hordes is that as you move on, you settle your population into those cities. Your horde settles back down into into city life. But of course that's not happening because these aren't labelled as horde units. Just for a quick example of what I mean, over here we have the Huns who normally would just sack a city and move on. But of course, what I want to show you is what should be happening as we occupy. When we occupy, yeah, we've pretty much lost that entire army and much of the others to settle in the city. And, okay, you can see this one doesn't have the horde, but a lot of them do have this little horde faction symbol on it. And that basically means they're the ones who are going to settle into the first 3 cities. At the moment, our Romano British forces don't have that, which means we're going to be way too strong. So let's head back in the files and try and make sure some of our units at least are horde units. A surprisingly simple solution is to create new units, ones that are specifically horde units. Now in essence, this new unit would be a clone of an existing one, so it is actually a lot simpler than you might think. We actually don't need to create battle models, for example, as they will simply be a copy of the original unit. I do already have a guide on how to create a completely new unit, so I'll leave a link to that at the top of your screen and in the description below. But to simply create a horde version of your unit, I'll take you through those steps quickly now. First of all, we're going to head back into Export Desca Unit, and from here we simply need to find whatever unit we're going to clone. In my case, the Foederati Infantry. So having used my find function, I'm going to select this entire entry and I'm going to copy and paste it in down below. So from here, I simply need to make my small edits. So I'm going to call it Foederati Infantry Horde. I need to simply add the underscored version of that name over here to dictionary. I'm just going to add that in for my own reference. After that, we need to move down to attributes, and we're going to add in can underscore horde. From there, we pretty much only need to look at the bottom here, ownership, where currently there are some other factions who have access, so we're just going to remove them. I simply want Romano British. I'm just going to highlight this bit here, and I'm going to copy it just so it's ready for the next file. Save it up, and we'll move on. Back inside Deska SM Factions this time, and you can see that I've already got Horde units for most of the other units that I'm interested in. I'm simply going to replace one of these. Of course, because the amount of the entries you have will relate to how many units you get when you Horde, I'm going to try and make sure I get a few more of these basic lads and only a few of these stronger units. So I'll just put in, you know what, we can have 2 of these Foederati Infantry Horde units, and that's all we need to do here. Save that up, and let's move on again. The next file is inside the data subfolder, and from there we're going to head into text, and we need to open up the file here, export underscore units. Inside this file, we need to simply search for Foederati Infantry. Once again, I'm going to copy that, and I've put all of my information way down the bottom. So I'm going to put that into there, and you can see some of my entries above as well. We're going to change that to Foederati Infantry underscore horde. Make sure you do type things correctly. I have found quite often I've made a small mistake and had to go back and fix it. There's my name there. Also make sure we add it in over here. Foederati underscore infantry underscore horde underscore deska, and same down here, Foederati underscore infantry underscore horde underscore deska underscore short. Perfect. So at that point, we can save this file and into the next folder. From the text folder, we need to go back into data and then into UI. We from here need to go into units, into Romano British, and we need to find the unit we're looking at, which is here, the Foederati Infantry. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. And because we're going to keep the unit card exactly the same, all I need to do here is just change the name so that we have ourselves Horde written on the end. This just needs to match up with the name of your unit. So that's looking good. The next step is to move back into UI, and this time into unit info. This is just the info card this time. And so back inside there, we need to do basically the same thing again. Copy and paste that particular unit card. And we're going to get rid of copy, of course. And before info, we need to put Foederati underscore infantry underscore horde and underscore info.tga. Perfect. Back inside the game then, and this time we're going to load up our Romano British friends, and we should find things are just a little bit different. Not hugely, but just a tiny bit. So as we load up, we've still got Cador over here, Cador casters, and we will just hire up these mercenaries to make sure we win, because every time I've created this little scenario here in order to test my new unit, I have found we've lost this battle quite often, which is a little bit embarrassing. So we're going to occupy the settlement as normal. These are all the normal units we put inside Deska underscore strat. But if we horde now, we're going to get a bunch of new units come out. You can see Sarmatian Auxilia Horde. You can see our Foederati Infantry Horde that we just set up. Luckily, I didn't muck that up. Growl Knight Horde, Horde Archers, Coastal Levy Horde. Oh yes, absolutely marvellous. There should be some ballista in here occasionally as well. Doesn't necessarily look like I've got a lot. There's one over there, so Horde Ballista. Excellent stuff. Let's go take them down towards, we have a whole army of peasants here. Excellent. Let's just get them to put this under siege and we'll see them in action, shall we? Here we are then, we have ourselves a lovely battle, and we might as well head on in and see what they're like in action. As you'll probably find out, they are basically the exact same units as the others. We haven't needed to add in any battle models whatsoever because they are exactly the same. Let's head on in. As we charge on into the city then, one small thing you might have noticed that our Horde units don't actually have the little Horde symbol in the corner. Indeed, that is something that I just need to change on the unit cards when we copied that. We'd actually need to slightly change it, and I can't actually be bothered to make that change myself. The fact that I can see in their name titles that they're Horde archers, for example, means that I feel like, you know what, I know which units are Hordes. I don't think I'll have a problem with it, so I'm not going to bother adding that in. If you want to go into something like Photoshop and change that unit card rather than simply copy it, you could go and do that. But for now, we're just going to, maybe not put it on high speed because we've got too many armies here, Thomas. But we're going to continue smashing these guys, and we'll see what happens when we capture it. As victory is ours, then let us see what happens to our mighty Horde, because of course the whole point of all of this was to make sure that there we go, the Hordes actually did settle. Now some of them are still here, of course, because we need to settle 3 before they all go. But those armies have certainly been chunked down a little bit. So let's go and head on in. I'm sorry, rebels, I don't mean to go and kill you, but just for the sake of the point here, let's go and head on in. So that army already broke itself up, got settled into a barracum. So yeah, as you can see here, we've got our Hordes working beautifully. Before we move on to the Alemanni and the Remaster, allow me to take a moment just to give a big thanks to all of my channel members and patrons for supporting the content here on the channel, and also to remind you that if you want to support the channel yourself, then you can follow the links in the description to my Patreon, Ko-fi or YouTube membership page. Thank you all very much. Now let's get into the files and see this in action. For the Alemanni, we're going to start by heading back into Deska SM Factions, and immediately what we want to do is copy the information from the Burgundii just a little bit above them. So once again, we're going to go from the first Horde Min units line and go down to the bottom section, copy that, and simply paste it in down here. Now, this time what we're going to do, rather than create new units, is simply give these Horde units over to this faction. They are very similar in terms of their general barbarian style, so they're going to fit in very nicely, and it saves you just a little bit of work. This time our job is going to be much simpler. All we need to do is find the units, Barb Horde Hunter being the first, and we're going to add the faction in. Now do make sure you actually know how to spell the unit. It's probably a good idea for me to go and do that actually. So yes, Alemanni. And we'll go and throw that back on the end of here. Excellent. Make sure we get our formatting correct. That's beautiful. So from Barb Horde Hunter, we also have Barb Horde Spearman and Raider. I can see actually the Raiders right here. Once again, we're just going to add the faction into the ownership list. That's all we need to do. Barb Horde Chosen Spearman. Oh, this is perfect. All right next to each other. Very easy indeed. And the last one, that's a swordsman. We need the spearman. So maybe we just missed it above. Indeed we did. Isn't that just magnificent stuff? So like that, now the Alemanni have all of those units available to them. And from here, we just need to go back into those UI folders again. So into UI, go into unit info, and we are simply going to take, for example, the Lombardi, who have those particular units, and we're just going to copy them over. So we have the Barb Horde Hunter, Barb Horde Swordsman, Barb Horde Peasant. Oh, I haven't added those, but we'll ignore those. Raiders and Spearmen. Excellent. So I'm going to copy those, and we'll just plonk those into the Alemanni folder. There we go. Marvellous stuff. And we don't need to change the names because it is literally the same unit on this occasion. Into UI, back this time into units. Once again, we'll just go and grab them from the Lombardis. And we have the Barb Horde Hunter, Barb Horde Swordsman, the Raider and the Spearman. Once again, copy those, and we'll head back into the Alemanni and paste those in. Apparently we have one of those already. That's absolutely fine, and we can now load up the game. As we begin our Alemanni campaign, then we see a new message of people in flight. Romano British, of course. Our setup for the earlier example is now in play for everyone. So, Vicus Alemanni, let's get ourselves hoarding. Indeed, single city faction. Let's get ourselves as a horde. Now, of course, yes, we were using the unit cards from, yes, Mr. Pink McGee over here. So we have bright pink units. Now, all right, we could actually do some work to fix this because a lot of these are actually very similar to our unit cards. If you're not too bothered by the colours, then that's absolutely fine. In many ways, it actually works quite well because you can see what your horde units are. So actually, I wouldn't be too bothered about it myself, but it can be easy enough to go and change if that's what we wanted to do. So let's go and get these guys smashing things up just a little bit and just make sure that nothing silly is going to happen. So first and foremost, we will do a little bit of an auto-resolve, lovely stuff, and let's do some occupying. Yes, indeed, many of our Horde units have now disappeared. That's good to know. As we head on into battle then, you can see that despite the unit card colouring, our units themselves are looking resplendent, absolutely magnificent. These guys over here have gone Frankish blue. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. Alright, and these guys are in Saxon. We're just a great mix of nonsense, but we're a Horde. We are a Horde. That kind of works for me. Alright, we could have a fiddle with that if we want, but nonetheless, we are looking ready for battle and the game isn't crashing. That's very good news. If we did want to go and change around some of these unit cards, then we could simply head back into the unit card section and take the unit that is basically the equivalent, the Lombard Archers for example, and we could do kind of similar to what we did before, which is copy and paste that and then find the unit, which is the Hunter over here, the Barb Horde Hunter, and we can take that bit of information, delete that, and basically go back over to our copy and put that as the new name. And basically now when the game looks for that unit, it will use that bit of artwork. And we also now need to go do this for the units as well. So let's head on into Alemanni. We can find our Lombard Archer, copy and paste that, and we need to find our Hunters. Excellent stuff. Let's just take that name, delete the file, and where's our copy? Yep, excellent stuff. Paste that on in. And to change the textures in the actual battle, we need to head back inside data and go towards Deska Model Battle. Inside the file, we need to find out which of these soldiers here refers to the Barb Horde Hunter, which is this one here, the Saxon Hunters. You may recall inside the Export Deska unit file, this was what their soldier type was listed as. It's a Saxon Hunter. But at the moment, yes, we can't see the Alemanni here because they don't originally have access to that faction. What we want then is the Lombard Archer version, just to make sure that we have a similar version here. So let's go and find that. And okay, we have more over here. We can grab our texture and we're just going to be dumping that one further back up in the file. We also need to grab the model sprite down here as well. That's specific to the Alemanni. So yes, let's grab the correct one. We're going to copy that, head back to our Saxon Hunters, and make sure we now have both the texture and the model sprite. So with that, and if you need to repeat that for other units, if you wish to spend your time doing that, you absolutely can. There's just a quick example for you. Let's head back into the game then and see that in action. This time as we horde up our faction then, we should have some slightly different units. Yes, some Horde Hunters. Now, because we've changed the unit cards, they don't anymore have these little Horde symbols. We, of course, would need to add that in for ourselves should we want to. But it does mean we now actually have ourselves our colours, if that's something that interests you. So let's go and bring our forces down here and try a little battle, just to show off that these guys look slightly different in battle. Here we are in battle then, and you can see our Horde Hunters this time are in the correct colours. It is a little bit of an awkward one because technically it's not the same unit. You don't really want to be thinking these are Lombard Archers when they're actually some Horde Hunters. Nonetheless, if you do care about the colours of your units in battle and indeed on these unit cards, you can apply this to the rest. I'm not sure I'd bother. I do think the cleanest way is to create a whole new Horde unit, or just not to really worry about the colours of them all come battle like this. Nonetheless, it is an option there for you. It's simple enough to do. If you want to get on with it, then, well, you can carry on with the rest of these units. As mentioned earlier, the Romano British are already a Horde faction in Rome Remastered, but should you want to make any of the other factions like we just saw with the Alemanni, well, you need to just follow a slightly different path of files. Also, the file does look slightly different. So, into Contents, into Resources, into Data, Barbarian Invasion, and Data, and from there we're going to go to that same file, Deska SM Factions. Whilst this file does have essentially the same information, it is laid out a little bit differently and I think a little bit more confusingly, to be honest. But there is the Horde information here, and we're going to steal from the Lombardi once again, just so that we have the same sort of set of units. So you can see here we've got the surnames. After the surname ends, I'm just going to take the end bracket of that. I'm going to go down past the units, down towards the end bracket before logos. So I'm just going to copy that, and then I'm going to head back up to the Alemanni. So that's our end bracket there. That's the same one that we just looked at between surnames and logos. I'm just going to paste it back in just like it was. And now we basically got the exact same information as we do for the other faction. And at this point we should be able to save this up and load up our game. Into our game of Rome Remastered then, and you can see the Abandon the Settlement and Become a Horde button is available. Excellent, and I got the achievement for that because I clearly haven't done much in this game on the remaster. But I should have got an extra achievement because I did it as a faction who aren't supposed to actually be able to horde. Excellent. So you can see we've got a few issues here, ironically with the Horde Hunters, who this time we don't have any of this stuff for. Obviously I didn't actually go and sort that out, but it's the exact same process as we saw originally. So there we are. It's pretty much the same thing. You can easily, in Rome Remastered, go and get yourself lovely Horde factions for all of those which aren't originally Hordes. Whilst Rome Remastered does have a slightly different file path to get to data, and Desca SM Factions looks a bit different, UI is exactly the same as in the previous examples. Just ignore the classic folders and go straight into units and unit info. The rest of it works exactly the same. Whilst I could go into Desca_strat and organise it so the Romans only started with one city, it's quite amusing giving it all away to the rebels. What it does mean is now I only have one left. And yes, indeed, that is Rome becoming a Horde faction. Just so that you're aware that you can do this with other factions as well. We have ourselves a selection of units here. This might actually be a better way to play as the Western Empire. Absolutely magnificent. I do seem to be lacking generals a little bit, but that's probably because they're scattered around the map. How absolutely silly. In case you're wondering about the rebels and their potential to horde, well, you can try, but it's not really going to work very well. For one reason, having only one settlement is pretty darn hard for them. Even if you do manage to somehow make that work, it doesn't work, I'm afraid. And now, yes, the people have been constantly moving and wish to stay settled for a while. It doesn't work for the rebels, I'm afraid. It just they're just mechanically a very different faction. I would love to do a Horde rebel campaign, but it makes absolutely no sense because when you sacked a settlement to continue being a Horde, it would become a rebel settlement unless you wouldn't be a Horde. It's a paradox within a paradox, and unfortunately for the rebels, they are the one exception to this video. We can't make them a Horde faction, but they kind of basically are anyway. Well, that is all for today. This guide can certainly add some new flavour to your campaigning, so do let me know what you get up to in the comments below. I was certainly very excited at discovering just how simple it was to make any faction a Horde, even if you do need a bit of extra modding for balance. But for now, I think it is time to leave you. Thank you very much for watching. I am Tener's the Human, and this has been a guide to unlocking any faction in Barbarian Invasion as a Horde faction. Thank you, and tally-ho. Send in the camels, those shiny, smelly camels. Oh, the anarchy loosed upon the world, apart from over here where we're kind of routed. Stupidity got us into this mess. Stupidity will get us out of it, damn it. We'll have a last stand at some point. But it's not today.